The Harmattan wind carried dust and exhaust fumes through Lagos's chaotic streets as Adoni Okafor hurried home from her third job of the day. Her worn slipper slapped against the wet pavement as she dodged puddles from the evening downpour, her thin wrapper doing little to protect her from the December chill that has settled over the city. At 25, she carried burdens that belonged to someone twice her age, working as a shop attendant in Alaba Market by morning, a booker server in Surale by afternoon, and an Uber driver with her brother's old Corolla by evening, all to pay for her younger brother's university fees at Unilag and their mother's mounting hospital bills at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. As she turned the corner near Tafawa Balewa Square, Adoni noticed an elderly woman struggling with her walking stick, her frail body swaying dangerously as Okadas and Danfos rushed past in the evening traffic. The woman's expensive girly and perfectly tailored buba suggested wealth, but in that moment, all Adoni saw was someone in distress. Without hesitation, she rushed forward just as the elderly woman's legs gave out beneath her. "Mama mi, are you alright?" Adoni asked gently in Yoruba, catching the woman before she could hit the concrete. The elderly woman looked up with clouded eyes, confusion and fear written across her weathered features. Adoni realized immediately that this wasn't just exhaustion. The woman seemed disoriented, lost. I don't know where I am," the woman whispered, switching between Yoruba and English. "I was looking for my grandson, but everything looks different. The buildings, they are all so tall now. This used to be all bush when I was young." Adoni's heart ached seeing the vulnerability in the woman's eyes. She helped her to a nearby bench under a shop's awning, shielding them both from the drizzle. "It's okay, Mama. Let me help you. Do you remember your name or where you live?" The woman's hands shook as she fumbled through her expensive Hermes bag. Adebayo Folik. "But I can't remember, my mind, it plays tricks on me sometimes." Her eyes filled with tears of frustration and embarrassment. Adoni gently took the woman's hands in her own, warming them. "Mama, it's alright. We'll figure this out together." She noticed a medical alert bracelet on the woman's wrist with an emergency contact number. Despite having only enough money left for transport home to Mushin, Adoni used her last airtime to make the call. The number connected to what sounded like a private medical facility on the island. After explaining the situation in her mix of English and Yoruba, Adoni was told that Mrs. Adebayo's family would be notified, but it would take at least 2 hours for someone to arrive due to Lagos traffic and the evening rain. Looking at the elderly woman shivering on the bench, Adoni made a decision that would change her life forever. "Mama, would you like to come to my house? It's small, but it's warm and dry. We can wait for your family there," Adoni offered, though she worried about how her modest Face Me I Face You apartment in Mushin would appear to someone clearly accustomed to luxury. Mrs. Adebayo's face brightened with genuine gratitude. "You're so kind, my daughter. But I don't want to be a burden." "You could never be a burden, Mo," Adoni said softly, helping the elderly woman to her feet. "My mama always taught me that we help each other, especially when someone is lost or scared. That's our way." Adoni's room in the compound was indeed tiny, barely enough space for a bed, a small table, and a corner where she cooked on a single burner. But it was spotlessly clean, and she had filled it with small touches that made it feel like home: family photos, a few novels by Chimamanda Adichie, and a small potted plant she'd grown from nothing. She helped Mrs. Adebayo out of her wet clothes and wrapped her in the warmest wrapper she owned. "Let me make you some tea," Adoni said, lighting a gas burner. She had been saving her last packet of Lipton for a special occasion, but this seemed more important than any celebration. As Mrs. Adebayo sipped the warm tea, her confusion seemed to clear slightly. She looked around the small space with wonder rather than judgment. "This is beautiful, my dear. You've made it feel like home. What's your name?" Adoni Okafor, Ma. Adoni. Sweet to have. Such a perfect name. Mrs. Adebayo smiled, and Adoni was struck by how regal she remained even in her vulnerability. You know, I haven't felt this peaceful in months. In my big house in Ikoyi, with all the house helps bustling about, sometimes I feel more lost than I did on that street corner. Adoni knelt beside her, gently adjusting the wrapper around the elderly woman's shoulders. Would you like me to plait your hair, Mama? My mother used to say it helped her think more clearly. For the next 2 hours, Adoni tended to Mrs. Adebayo with the same care she would have given her own grandmother. She plaited her grey hair in simple cornrows, massaged her aching hands with shea butter, and listened patiently as the elderly woman shared fragments of memories, stories about her late husband who built a business empire from selling kola nuts, her successful grandson who was always too busy to visit, and her fear of becoming a burden as her mind grew less reliable. My grandson is a good boy, Mrs. Adebayo said wistfully. But he works so hard, carries so much responsibility. He thinks I don't notice how tired he looks, how he forces smiles when he visits. I worry that he'll work himself to death like his father did. Adoni found herself sharing too, telling Mrs. Adebayo about her own dreams of becoming a teacher, put on hold to support her family. There was something about the elderly woman's gentle presence that made confidences flow naturally. When someone finally knocked at the compound gate, Adoni opened it to find herself face to face with the most handsome man she had ever seen. Adebayo Kemi stood in the narrow corridor, his expensive agbada slightly wrinkled from worry, his usually perfectly groomed appearance disheveled. At 32, he was the youngest CEO in the history of Adebayo Holdings, a conglomerate his grandfather had built from trading palm oil and kola nuts. His sharp Yoruba features and intense dark eyes had graced the covers of business magazines like This Day Style and Genevieve, but right now, he looked like nothing more than a worried grandson. "Grandmama," he called softly in Yoruba, his voice cracking with relief as he saw his grandmother safe and cared for. Mrs. Adebayo's face lit up at the sight of him. "Kemi. There you are. I was looking for you, but I got confused. This angel found me and took such good care of me." Kemi's eyes moved to Adoni, taking in her simple Ankara wrapper, her natural hair in a neat bun, and the way she had been quietly packing plantain chips and groundnuts for his grandmother's journey home. Something shifted in his chest as he watched her careful, loving attention to an elderly woman who was a complete stranger. I don't know how to thank you," he said, his usual commanding presence replaced by genuine humility. "When the facility called and said Grandmama was missing, I thought." He couldn't finish the sentence. "She was scared and confused," Adoni said simply in English, then switched to Yoruba. Anyone would have done the same. But Kemi knew that wasn't true. In his world of calculated relationships and transactional kindness, he had rarely seen such pure compassion. He watched as Adoni knelt beside his grandmother one last time, adjusting her geli and pressing the remaining tea packets into her hands. "This will help you sleep well tonight, Mama," Adoni said softly in Yoruba. "And remember, if you ever feel lost again, just look for the kindness in people's eyes. It's always there, even when everything else seems confusing." Mrs. Adebayo took Adoni's hands in hers. "I won't forget you, my daughter. You have a light in you that this Lagos needs." As Kemi helped his grandmother into the waiting Mercedes, he found himself glancing back at Adoni, who stood by the compound gate despite the drizzle, watching to make sure they left safely. Something about her selfless grace haunted him long after the car disappeared into Lagos traffic. The next morning, Mrs. Adebayo surprised her grandson by asking him to hire a personal companion, specifically, the young woman who had helped her. "She has healing hands, Kemi," his grandmother insisted in Yoruba. "Not just for bodies, but for hearts. I felt more like myself with her than I have in years." Kemi found Adoni at her shop in Alaba Market, arranging fabric with the same careful attention she had shown his grandmother. When he offered her a position as his grandmother's companion, with a salary that would solve all her financial worries, Adoni's first concern wasn't the money. "Will I be able to truly help her?" she asked. "Not just watch her, but make her feel valued and loved." It was a question that revealed everything about her character, and Kemi found himself more intrigued than ever. Adoni moved into the Adebayo family compound in Ikoyi, a sprawling modern mansion with traditional Yoruba architectural elements. Her days were filled with caring for Mrs. Adebayo, taking gentle walks in the garden, reading Yoruba folklore together, playing Ayo and Ludo, and most importantly, listening to the stories of a woman whose wisdom had been overlooked in the rush of Lagos life. Under Adoni's care, Mrs. Adebayo's condition stabilized remarkably. The confusion episodes became less frequent, her appetite improved, and her laughter returned. She began teaching Adoni traditional recipes for egusi and pepper soup, and together they tended a small herb garden where they grew scent leaves, uziza, and curry. Kemi found himself making excuses to visit his grandmother more often, drawn not just by family duty but by glimpses of Adoni's gentle strength. He watched her patiently guide his grandmother through physical therapy exercises, her hand steady and encouraging. He observed her reading aloud with animated voices that made his grandmother laugh like a young girl. He noticed how she remembered every small preference, every story, every concern his grandmother shared. But it wasn't just Adoni's care for his grandmother that captivated Kemi. It was the way she moved through the world with such grace despite having every reason to be bitter about her circumstances. It was her genuine smile when she thought no one was watching, and her quiet strength when facing difficulties. It was the way she saw beauty in small things, a flowering bougainvillea, a perfectly prepared meal, the satisfaction of helping someone feel better. Most of all, it was her beauty, not just the obvious physical beauty that made his breath catch when she laughed, but the inner radiance that seemed to illuminate everything around her. One evening, Kemi found Adoni in the garden, gently singing a Yoruba lullaby while his grandmother napped nearby. The setting sun caught the gold undertones in her dark skin, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. "She's much happier since you came," he said quietly in Yoruba, not wanting to wake his grandmother. Adoni looked up, surprised. "She's taught me so much. About strength, about finding joy even when your body betrays you, about the importance of family and tradition." "And what has she taught you about love?" The question escaped before Kemi could stop it. Adoni was quiet for a long moment, her cheeks warming. "That it's not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's about choosing to care for someone every single day, especially when it's difficult." Kemi stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Adoni, Kemi Omomi, his grandmother's, the elderly woman, now thriving under Adoni's continued care and Kemi's increased attention, led the ceremony alongside the eldest family members, declaring that she had gained not just a granddaughter-in-law but the daughter she had always prayed for. As Kemi lifted Adoni's veil during their white wedding ceremony and saw her radiant smile, he knew that the night she had rescued his grandmother from Lagos's chaotic streets, she had actually rescued them all, showing them that love was not about what you could gain, but what you were willing to give, and that sometimes the most precious treasures come disguised as simple acts of human kindness.